Now we have two more examples with different worlds, different areas. One with two groups and no borders, and different tendencies and learning factors, and three groups in isolated areas, later on in the last example.
In this one we have the two groups, the red one and the green one. The red one has a 330 again, the green one has a 227, okay? And there is no border. It means that they will start in, the green ones, for example, will start in this part, but after that they can move all around. The red one will start in these two areas, but they can move. And here again we represent the message, the initial contents of the memory of the red ones and the initial preferences of the red ones. So they will move for sure the message in this direction and the preferences if they learn to the center one. And we have the red ones here that has more or less the preferences and the message more or less in the same place. The difference here will be that the red ones has more or less a medium tendency, so they will behave as a dominant or creative more or less in the same way, but the green ones will be more dominant of the information. So they will try to take the message and approximate to their preferences. Moreover, because in order to make this difference more visible, more visual, okay, it's the same. We have put the learning factor of the green ones only to 0.1. They don't learn too much, so they will not approximate to the other ones. So, okay, the memorization is more or less the same. So we can see now how it works. Okay, you see here start the green ones, the red ones. They have at the beginning the message and the preferences that we said, but as soon as they start to move, they can change one with each other. So if we run the simulation, they will change the preferences. The red ones change the preferences because they learn, but the green ones doesn't learn too much. And we can see the message and the culture. If we start again, let me see in order to see how it evolves. Because there is an exchange of information. As soon as they start to move, you obtain something like a bag here. We have two different colors for sure in order to see which kind of message they have, depending on the group. And we see how we obtain something like yellow here, because it's the mix between red and green in the computer world. Because we use here the RGB representation of the colors. So we obtain something like a cultural bag here, but because the red ones are very dominant and they don't learn too much, we obtain always something like a bag of message here.
The green ones,
the green ones, yes. In this part, we have something like a cultural dynamics. The red one is more or less reflects the amount of patches that the cultural area of this world occur in this part. This one is the green one. We are not using the blue, so the blue is 0, and the black one is something like the total amount of information they use. We can see that at the beginning, when they start to move, they have a big area, but when they mix, they start to reduce the area because they try to have the same message in the same area. So it's some kind of reduction in the cultural area, and after that they tend to some kind of attractor in this part. And the second one is the second. Okay, it's the one, the first one. Okay. Here we have 3 different groups, red, green, and blue, and we have borders. This is the area that they can't cross at the beginning. So the blue ones will start to move in this area, the red ones will start to move in this one, and the green in this area. Here we have defined the preferences and message of the red ones, green ones, and blue ones. At the beginning, I mean, they have not to be in the same part, because here we have two different representations. One is the real word, and the other one is the word of ideas, the word of the message that we use by the two-dimensional space. But in this case, in order to see in a easier way, we put in the same area. The difference are, let me see, more or less they have the same behavior in the three cases. This is the distribution of the tendency in the three cases, more or less the same. They have the more or less the same population, around 100, and the same learning factor. And the memory size is the same again in the three ones. So if we try to run, if we run simulation, then they can cross the area, so they move here. So we see in the culture that they have something like a pure message, or a set of pure message for every group. There is no mix between them. We can see the message in itself, how they behave, and the preferences. Because they don't have messages too far from their preferences, there is no movement in the preferences, so they don't learn. But if we open the borders, they can cross, and then we see how overall the culture start to mix between the different groups. Because in these cases, the three groups have more or less the same characteristics. What we obtain here will be, at the end of the process, something like a cultural area here in this area, in this part. And for sure that will be a mix between them. So we obtain something like white or very bright, because it's a mix between red, green, and blue. So we see again here how the behavior of the cultural dynamics of every group works. Again, here is the evolution when they were alone and isolated in this area. When we open the borders, then there is an increasing of the cultural area because there are a lot of information around. So as soon as they have novelty in their words, there are a lot of new messages and new areas of cultural information. And after that, okay, we have time enough. Then we saw that usually these start to decrease a little bit and to some kind of stabilization. That's all. Continue.
Okay, so those are the examples some of the examples we have been working on so far. Some of the things we have introduced in the cultural areas in relation to the traces that communicative exchanges leave in the area. The other important thing, I'll talk a little bit about this in a moment, is that in all the examples after an undetermined number of exchanges, that will depend on the rate of communication, we think that all informational units in a specific area change over a certain period of time. So even if you can identify the same area as the red area, and that could be inferred as this or that culture, if you select a point in time, there will be a period of time after which none of the original message will be in the same way in which they existed at the beginning. So it will be traces and parts of those messages probably mixed with others as part of the content, but there's nothing in terms of the original message that will stay completely as it is.